How you doing? It's Sandeshian made a video, and it's about Lucy Letby, the baby killer nurse. Um, anyway, before anyway, the article, it's an opinion piece, and it's on spikedonline.com, and it's called "The Case Against Lucy Letby. Ignore the armchair detectives. There is an overwhelming evidence that she murdered babies in her care." Before getting to the article, if you could follow me on X, subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, TikTok, and BitChute as well, if you don't mind, please. Okay, I'm going to get into it now. Perhaps it is the fault of reporting restrictions. Oh, I'll get into my thoughts after I've read the article. When the Crown Prosecution Service announced that serial killer nurse Lucy Letby, convicted in 2023 of 7 murders and 8 attempted murders of babies, would be retried for the attempted murder of baby Kay last autumn, there was a 9 month media blackout in the UK that only came to an end in July 2024. By the time the reporting restrictions were lifted, a one sided pro Letby article published in the New Yorker, technically blocked online in Britain but easy enough to access, had achieved cult status and unleashed a gaggle of armchair detectives, armchair pathologists, and armchair barristers. Doubts about the verdicts were no longer confined to Cranko websites, but started appearing in the Telegraph, the Guardian, and the Independent, Private Eye, and elsewhere. Letby is innocent may not yet be the opinion of the majority, but it will get you thrown out of many parties. It has been allowed to flourish because those of us who accept the verdicts see little point in challenging claims that have already been rejected by the courts, but perhaps we should. Nothing has done more to sow confusion about the case than the idea that it was all about statistics. A spreadsheet showing that Letby was present during the murders and attempted murders was used by the prosecution and widely circulated in the media after her first conviction. Those who knew little else about the case assumed that this was what had persuaded the jury. Concerns were raised about the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where a man shoots at the side of a barn, then paints a target centered around the tightest cluster of bullet holes. Was it not possible, they said, that the police had looked at the spiking deaths that took place at the counters of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 16, cherry picked the ones at which Letby was present and ignored the rest? As the normal sober economist asserts in the current issue, the target was painted around the arrow. She was convicted. Um, it is a basic task of the prosecution to establish that the accused was at the scene of the crime. It is true that Letby's invariable presence on the ward when baby suffered unexpected collapses raised concerns among some of her colleagues, although the concerns were initially more about poor practice than foul play. It is also true that the prosecution largely depended on her being the only nurse on duty when the alleged attacks occurred. Nor were the nurse was present on more than 7 occasions, whereas Letby was there for all 22. If you accept that all 22 incidents involved deliberate harm inflicted on babies, Letby is clearly the prime suspect. This is not a statistical argument, it is about opportunity. Once the court had established that someone was killing children in the Carl CH, it could only have been Letby because everybody else had the watertight alibi of not being in the hospital at the time. This logic holds even if you think that only half the incidents involving deliberate harm, since none of her colleagues were present at even half the time. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy only comes into play if all the deaths and collapses had a natural cause. In that scenario, it is possible that there were unexplained deaths that Letby was never charged with because she was not present. This is pure speculation because we do not know what caused the deaths of the other babies during the relevant period, nor do we know whenever Letby was present, although it is at least possible for this possibility to be entertained. The deaths and collapses must have an innocent explanation. That is why Letby kept mentioning understaffing and plumbing problems on the ward, the latter supposedly spreading infectious disease. There were indeed staffing shortages, and there had been at least one incident of sewage backing up into a sink, but Letby was never able to explain how these issues caused deaths and collapses. None of the babies died from sepsis, and neither the collapses nor the recoveries were consistent with infection. One of the most unusual features of some of the cases was that the babies recovered as suddenly and unexpectedly as they collapsed, which is not what you see with a standard infection or natural deterioration. As for the staffing, there was usually one nurse per baby in nursery one, where the sickest baby were kept, and when a baby died, that nurse was usually Lucy Letby. There were undoubtedly shortcomings at the hospital, as there are across the NHS, but in almost none of the cases could these problems explain healthy babies suddenly dying in ways that staff had never seen before. The pound shop Poirot, who unwittingly regurgitated Letby's talking points, had been no more able than she was to explain how dodgy plumbing and occasional understaffing caused the events of 2015 and 16, let alone how it caused two babies to be poisoned by insulin. They blithely claimed that the hospital was badly run and talk vaguely about a spike in deaths that could have happened in any hospital. They talk about babies dying in neonatal wards as if it were a regular occurrence, and that Letby was in effect, simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the death of early neonates at the COCH was unusual. Those There were only three a year, and in 2013 and 2014. And most of the babies that Letby was convicted of murdering were relatively healthy. None of them was expected to die, but they all suddenly collapsed, often shortly after their parents had left their bedside or after Letby came on duty. For Letby's defenders, it is important that people do not look carefully at how babies die. They want you to focus on the so-called statistics rather than the details. Their cause has been aided by the court transcripts not being publicly available, although an enlightening judgment from the Court of Appeal is available. Hang on. Is available, and some transcripts have been narrated on the Crime C2 Courtroom YouTube channel. This material, alongside newspaper coverage of the two trials, is no substitute for being on the jury, but it provides ample evidence of foul play. Take the last of Letby's victims. When Letby was in Ibiza in June 2016, the COCH took in three naturally conceived triplets. They were premature, but were described by a consultant at the COCH as completely normal triplets who were expected to run a healthy course until Letby returned from holiday and became the designated nurse for two of them in nursery 2. The first to die was baby O, who weighed 4.5 pounds and was born in good condition and made good progress. On the 23rd of June, Letby's first day back at work, she was alone with baby O when he suffered a collapse. Dr. Andreas Monorides, I think that's how the surname is said, but if it's not, I apologise. The reviewing pathologist said that the cause of death was inflicted traumatic injury to the liver, profound gastric and intestinal and distension following acute excessive infusion of air via nasogastric tube and embolism due to the administration into a venous line. He said that the damage to baby O's liver was so extensive that it was like that of a victim of a road traffic accident. As with many other babies who collapsed during Letby's tenure, Baby O had an unusual rash that came and went. Numerous medics who saw these babies collapse said they had never seen this type of skin discoloration before. Professor Owen Arthurs, a radiologist, said that X-rays of Baby O showed gas in the heart, and that was consistent with severe trauma or air embolus. I think that's what it says, embolus. Dr. Dewey Evans, a retired consultant and pediatrician who reviewed all the cases for the police, said that Baby O's death was likely to be a result of air embolus together with bleeding within the liver and into the peritoneal cavity. Dr. Sandy Bohin, a practicing consultant neonatologist who also reviewed all the cases, agreed with this opinion. Blood tests found no traces of infection. Letby accepted in court that the liver injury happened on her watch and ruled out staffing levels on her as a contributory factor. Letby is incriminated not only by her presence at the crime scene, but also by various actions that were characteristic of how she went about her killing. She falsified a medical note writing that Baby O had been on breathing support when he was not, thereby making it look as if he was sicker than he was. That's fraud. After he died, she told another nurse that Baby O had a big tummy overnight, but just ballooned after lunch and went from there, as if his full abdomen the night before Letby started his shift was somehow responsible for his collapse. A week after the death, she wrote, peripheral access lost on a Datix form used by staff to report clinical incidents, but this was immediately contradicted by Dr. Stephen Breary, the non-natal lead who had tried to resuscitate Baby O, who insists that intravenous access was not lost at any point. Why would Letby lie about this? Because if intravenous access was lost, the child could not have been injected with air. She was covering her tracks. This is typical of what the prosecution called Letby's gaslighting. She will portray babies as sicker than they were, so their deaths was seen less suspicious. After the death of Baby O, she planted seeds for her next murder by texting her colleague about Baby P, saying, "Worry as identical." The next day, Baby P collapsed at 3:14 p.m. just after doctors had examined him, and Letby was alarmed by his cot. He died at 4 p.m. That's a minute over 45 minutes. That's really quick. The cause of death was listed as sudden unexpected postnatal collapse, and the coroner was unable to identify the underlying cause. There was no evidence of infection. Letby texted a colleague to say, "Just blew Tommy up and had aponias, downward spiral, similar to Baby O." She was creating a narrative that the triplets had a mysterious genetic condition that would kill them all. But they didn't. We know this because the third triplet survived, despite being the sickest of the three at birth, because his parents pleaded with the paediatrician for him to be transferred to Liverpool Women's Hospital. The paediatrician agreed because, by this time, she had concluded that Letby was a mortal danger and that transferring the last triplet was the only way he was going to live. 2 days after texting a colleague from Ibiza to say that she would probably be back with a bang, back in with a bang, two triplets had died without an adequate explanation. During Baby P's collapse, Letby said to another nurse, "He's not leaving here alive, is he?" A comment that was at the very least unprofessional. On the first anniversary of Baby O's death, she looked up the family on Facebook and drafted a strange note saying, "Today is your birthday, but you're not here, and I'm so sorry for that." This could be interpreted as the outpouring of sensitiveness, except that it was addressed to all three triplets, despite one of them being alive and well. Did she get confused, or was she fantasizing about killing them all? It is idle to speculate, and her personal jotting and offhand comments were not central to the prosecution. but her peculiar behaviour is worth noting, since part of the disbelief about her guilt stems from her supposed normality. Baby Oles and Peas are just two of the 14 children Letby was convicted of attacking, but even a brief overview of their case it should be enough to dispel the notion that there was a random spike in the number of run-of-the-mill deaths of ultra-sick infants at the COCH, which the police rebadged as murders and arrested whoever was most often on duty. If the jury had been bewitched by the staff rota spreadsheet, they would have convicted Letby on all counts. Instead, the first jury acquitted her of 2 counts and failed to reach a verdict on a further 6. The evidence of foul play is so overwhelming that Letby supporters have to disregard almost everything said by countless medics who were at the hospital at the time, as well as the opinion of pathologists, neonatologists, radiologists, and hematologists, not to mention the views of 2 juries and 3 appeal court judges. The doctors who raised the alarm, they had a grudge against Letby for some reason. Dr. Dewey Evans, he's a grifter. Numerous experts who agreed with Evans, groupthink. The forensic evidence showing that someone was poisoning babies with insulin, the tests were wrong. Then Letby's lawyer, he was useless. On and on they go. These Letby simps who imagine they could have destroyed the prosecution's case in 5 minutes if only they had been allowed to take the stand. Letby's fan club complains that the defense called no expert witnesses to counter the evidence from the prosecution, although at least one expert had himself available. They suggested that this alone is enough to deem the trial unfair and the conviction unsafe. Her lawyer, Ben Myers Casey, is one of the best silks in the land. He represented Letby as well as he could, and she was happy enough with him to have kept him on for her appeal. There was only one rational reason why he would choose not to call an expert to discuss the science. It would have damaged the defense. If a medical expert had been called, the cross-examination from the prosecution would likely have gone something like this. Could the death of a child have been Ebolism? Yes. What could it have been? I don't know. What I don't understand about these people that say that Letby's innocent. But the thing is, she was clearly these babies were dying when she was there, and even the people that were present in that very hospital were even found it very strange, and also the fact that even leading experts in the medical field were even like going, yeah, she's guilty. And the thing is, the thing that I don't understand is about the which I will say one thing about the one part that was the NHS's fault. If when it came to baby 6 or baby 7 that started dying, why wasn't Letby looked under a careful eye? Why wasn't she fired? She should have been given the sack as a nurse, because she's clearly not, because she clearly should have not been a nurse in the first place. She's Because to me, looking at this case, personally, to me, even though she's 100% guilty, and I'm not going to make excuses, but it seems to me that she did this because the thing is, she does not like kids, and it seems to me that she has she suffers from that she didn't have a good childhood. But just because you don't have a good childhood, it doesn't mean to say that has to be what you're going to end up being in your adult life. So I mean, the fact that she just kept coming up with excuses, and her supposed fan club kept coming up with excuses, in the end, I mean, they just made her look even worse. In the end, the defense called no witnesses apart from a plumber who was supposed to shore up Letby's Rizzle theory about sewage. This slightly pathetic detail is not a sign that Myers was incompetent. Rather, it indicates that Letby did not have a leg to stand on. Exactly what person, what person in their right mind would find her innocent? Seriously, and these people that defend her, what if that was your baby, and what if that was your niece or nephew that died, and you found out that she was a nurse and they died under her care? I mean, why are you defending her? Um, Letby seems to have believed that her best chance of wriggling out of her crimes was to take the stand herself and sweet talk the jury. It didn't work. By all accounts, she came across as shifty, cold, and evasive, and caught up in her own web of lives and claiming to have forgotten things that anyone would remember. She pretty much didn't care what she did. The only thing she was sorry about was the fact that she got caught. That's what it is. That she didn't want to get caught. The possibility of Letby's innocence cannot be completely discounted, but if it was a miscarriage of justice, it was one of the most elaborate and unlikely miscarriages of justice in history. For all practical purposes, it comes down to this: if no one was killing children at the Kelsey age in 2015-16, Letby is obviously innocent. But if anyone was killing children at the Kelsey age in 2015-16, it was her, which is obviously what happened. Why? Because she was the only person who had the opportunity on the dates in question. Therefore, for Letby to be innocent, there could have been no murders or attacks on babies, but that can only be true if there has been an extraordinary uh, concatenation of circumstances that can only be plausibly attributed to a conspiracy involving a large number of doctors, nurses, medical experts, and quite possibly her own defense team. And for there to be a conspiracy, there must be a motive. Exactly. Her motive for doing all this was she obviously hates kids and babies, because it's like, why else would you kill why else would you kill babies, not children, babies. Letby's apologists, like Letby herself, are broadly aware of this, but the only motive they can find requires a preposterous belief that NHS managers wanted to avoid the bad publicity that comes from having a high mortality rate due to poor plumbing and medical incompetence, and so decided to throw Lucy under the bus. In other words, they callously condemned an innocent young woman to die in prison because they thought that making the Countess of Chester Hospital, world famous for harbouring Britain's most prolific child killer, was preferable to taking the indirect blame for a spike in neonatal deaths. Even if we disregard the fact that it was the doctors who raised suspicions about Letby and NHS managers who shielded her, this is a mental thing to believe. But you had better get used to hearing such theories, because as long as Letby is in prison, there will be people prepared to be clown themselves by defending her, and she's never going to get out of prison. In my opinion, I reckon she is going to get out of prison. I reckon she's going to get out of prison probably after 10 years, because of the, and the reason I say is because of the messed up world that we live world culture that we live in now. I reckon she'll be out of prison on good behaviour after 10 years, most likely. That's just my opinion. I remember when they were talking. Now I heard about this. I was at my mum's. This was early in the morning, and they were talking about this on Jeremy Vine. I did not know about any of this beforehand, and they were talking about this, and they're talking about the sentencing. Now, um, there was a on the panel. I can't remember who else was on there, but there was a former police chief, if I remember, and they were asking, like, is it should she be in prison, or should she get the death penalty? Well, should we bring back the death penalty? And the thing is, his response was, and I 100% agreed with him on this, and I still do. she should have gotten the death penalty because she's a serial killer, okay? And also the fact that look how many babies she killed. And if you bring back the death penalty, you're sending a message to serial killers and would be killers and letting them know that that this bullshit will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. And then you had other people on there. I think people that phoned up going, "Oh well, the thing is, we're more civilized than the countries that we're more civilized than the countries who have the death penalty, you know." But the thing is, the way I saw it was, to the rest of the world, we're gonna be looked at as soft at serial killers, because the thing is, we weren't we weren't we weren't prepared to like we weren't prepared to be like, okay, this sort of behavior is not going to be tolerated anymore. It's about sending a message, and the fact that she was able to get a prison sentence, I honestly think was a absolute travesty. It was an absolute joke. It wasn't, and it just made the and it just made the it was just such a shame. It was really a shame, because she pretty much is, by all accounts, a serial killer, and she pretty much accepted no responsibility, only maybe a bit. But the thing is, she the only thing she was guilt and she didn't like. She was sorry about was the fact that she got caught. That's what it was. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And if you could follow me on X and subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, TikTok, and BitChute as well, if you don't mind, please. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.